I just sat down with my friend Vijay to talk everything Kaspa. Vijay is a former Bitcoin Maxi and now Kaspa enthusiast. Bitcoin and Kaspa, they're both proof of work, but they're a little bit different. There's a big Bitcoin versus Kaspa debate going on right now, and we're taking advantage of that here in the Coin Zone. You're going to learn a lot of things about Bitcoin, you're going to learn a lot of things about Kaspa. Before we jump into the video, the last thing I need you to do is to subscribe to the channel here and make sure to hit that like button. Now, here's my interview with Vijay. Welcome back to another episode of the Coin Zone. I'm your host, Crypto with Paul. Guys, we got a special guest for you today, Vijay. Appreciate you for coming on to the channel. How you doing, brother?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks so much for the invite. It's good to meet you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you for coming on. Big things happening in the Kaspa community as of late. Vijay, I wanted to have you on because you're a CFA. You were a big advocate for Bitcoin, and since I guess just your innate curiosity led you to Kaspa. Curious to just know your journey, how you got into crypto in general, just to start off, and then what led you specifically from Bitcoin to Kaspa.
So I was in college, and then graduating ish in the mid 2010s, and one of my friends told me to go this event with them in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. That's where I was living. And I'm just like, okay, sure, whatever. It's a crypto event. And I didn't know anything about it, but I just knew they had some food. So I'm like, sure, why not? I'll go. I didn't think anything of it. So I went there, and then they were talking about this blockchain technology. I didn't really understand it. Again, I wasn't really I thought it was interesting, but I think it was a little bit more advanced than I would have liked. And so I didn't understand the basics at all. So it was just too detailed for me to really tune in. And in that, I realized afterwards that they're actually talking about Ethereum, not necessarily Bitcoin. So, I mean, back then, I think it was like 2016, 2015-ish. Ethereum was pretty new, and no one really knew about it, but that's what this event was about. And then later on, I just completely dismissed it. 2017, one of my friends from college messaged me. Is like, hey, what do you think about Bitcoin? I just said it's a scam. I mean, it doesn't produce cash flows, and there's no point holding it. You can get dumped on. He ended up buying it anyways. It goes up to 19,000 and he doesn't sell, and then he loses everything, or not like whatever he put into, right? Drops to about 3,000. Then 2019, someone online paid me like $15 in Bitcoin. So I opened up a Coinbase account and got $15, and I'm like, okay, I need a little bit more. So I put in $100. I didn't think anything of it for another few more years. And then I just noticed, hey, it started going up. And so I started buying a bunch of other coins that I didn't really understand, like Ethereum, some Litecoin, a meme coin called Mana, if you're familiar with that. That's for this game called Decentraland. It's an online game. Yeah. So again, had no idea what I was doing. Bought it, lost most of my money in Mana for sure. And then my wife and I moved to Seattle in 2024, and I went to a lunch. And again, this whole time I have not been thinking about Bitcoin. I had some, but really not that much. And then this gentleman that I sat next to at lunch, he asked me, he's like, hey, have you heard of this guy named Michael Saylor? And I'm like, I have no idea who that is. So then he sent me like his Q3 report, basically earnings call, and I went through that, and I think I got orange pilled at that moment because I've heard of Bitcoin. I'm like, Bitcoin isn't dead yet. It's trading at 90,000. Maybe I should look into this again. And then understanding that it's pristine collateral. It's just because there's only 21 million, and I understood money as an investment advisor. I understand the concept of inflation, but I didn't understand the concept of monetary debasement. I'm just like, yeah, things are going to get more expensive. I just accepted it. So that's why I invest in index funds. That's why I invest in real estate too, basically hedge against inflation or also grow your wealth. But I didn't realize that there's actually a whole revolution about changing the underlying base layer of money. And that's what Bitcoin was. And I didn't get it till end of 2024. So the moment I got that, I decided to sell one of my rental properties and just buy Bitcoin with it. Of course, I had to pay taxes, pay off my mortgage, so I didn't really get the full amount. So only got to put in a little bit, but it also reduced the amount that I had to pay for fixing up the properties or dealing with tenants. And then I'm like, this is actually a pretty good investment. Let me do it again. So I sold my second rental property earlier this year in 2025. But during this process, I became Bitcoin Maxi because I realized that is pristine collateral. It's one of the best investments in the world. But I didn't pay attention to any of its flaws. And I didn't realize there were flaws because, I was in the rabbit hole and in the echo chamber saying Bitcoin is perfect. It's perfect money, perfect collateral. And I get it. But then, Gresham's law says that bad money drives out the good. So you don't actually use Bitcoin for medium exchange. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then Bitcoin's supposed to scale in layers as all money does. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But then I guess end of June, some Caspians got my comments and they started asking me, they're like, what do you think of Kaspa? The first response I said was, it's a scam. And I said that because, Bitcoin only, right? Everything else is a shitcoin. And never really thought about it. I'm just like, yeah, I mean, there's over 10 million coins or whatever. It's ridiculous how many 98% of them are literally pointless and probably a scam. And so it doesn't make sense to shift through every single one of them. So because of that, it's just easier to just dismiss everything. That's what you do as a Bitcoin maxi, because it's like, hey, Bitcoin's really good, but most maxis don't even acknowledge it's not perfect. But I thought it was perfect because that's what Sailor says. That's what everyone says. Like, hey, it's perfect. Just keep stacking. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's just put my head in the sand and just do it because it just feels right. Because everyone that you see through the algorithm is doing the same thing. But then you realize 97% of the world doesn't have any Bitcoin. And so it's like, oh, yeah, we're front running most of the world. But yeah, so they started asking me questions about Bitcoin. I'm like, yeah, it's perfect. But then as I dive deeper into the Caspa community, not only is it better technology, but it helped me, I guess, study Bitcoin through a different light. Because I mean, I sold all my index funds, or most of my index funds. I sold both my properties. I have a pretty concentrated Bitcoin position, so I'm always looking for vulnerabilities, and that's why I was open minded. I think because if something were to happen, I don't want to get blindsided. And a lot of maxis are living on the Bitcoin standard, which I think is fine. It's just I think they're looking too short term and not realizing what is likely to happen in the next 10 to 15 or 20 years. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, studying Caspa, I think, helped me see the vulnerabilities of Bitcoin, which otherwise I would have not been able to.
Yeah. You mentioned Caspa is a better technology. There's obviously Caspa is a blockDAG structure. It's basically not a normal blockchain. This was cited, I believe, in the Ethereum white paper. Jonathan, the founder of Caspa, was basically cited with this. Can you
Yeah.
talk about the differences in the game-changing technology that is Caspa that makes it better than Bitcoin?
Yeah. So I don't have too much of a technical background. I'll try my best. I know people watching this are like, Vijay, why do you say that? Or why didn't you say that? So full apologies and full disclosure there. But blockchains are usually, one block after another. Bitcoin was the first. It took a long, 10-minute block times. What Jonathan did was, he's been cited over 4,000 times in a bunch of other cryptocurrency white papers. So it's not just Ethereum. Ethereum's one of the biggest ones. But this took, I don't know, like multiple years of research, like almost 7-8 years of research to create Caspa in 2021. So it wasn't just something that came up overnight. It did take a lot of research. Again, a postdoc from Harvard. So very credentialed person and team that put this together. Basically, how blockDAG or how Caspa works is instead of one block at a time, it creates parallel blocks. So that way, because all proof of work, there's no orphanage or no blocks get orphaned. So if you think about a lot of, I guess, disputes against faster blocks is, oh, they're going so fast that the blocks basically get orphaned and then the transactions don't go through and this becomes a whole issue. But the way that the structure works is because the block times are so fast, and I guess this is where my lack of technical background comes in, where I can't really articulate it. It's because of that, it's able to not exactly orphan the blocks, and so all transactions go through within a couple seconds, if less than that, and you're able to, I guess, it's all final settled. I think that's a crazy thing. It's like the problem with base layer Bitcoin is that if I put out a transaction, and I've tried this, best case it takes 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes almost 2 hours for your block to get mined. And sure, people are like, yeah, it's for institutions, it's for ultra high net worths, for final settlement. People don't need to broadcast my coffee transaction. I'm like, yeah, I get that. But then if you go to layer 2 with Bitcoin, what's going to happen is you're using Lightning or some other layer 2 solution, but every transaction on layer 2 does not directly support the miners. And I think that's where the issue comes, because let's say there is hyper Bitcoinization. Let's say 50% of the world adopts Bitcoin, 4 billion people. What's going to happen there? It's most people are using Lightning. Who's actually using the base layer? It's going to get so prohibitively expensive on the base layer to even use it. That creates, in my opinion, a security budget issue with Bitcoin. I don't know the exact numbers, but what's going to happen is if not enough people use Bitcoin, there's not enough fee revenue for miners to keep them incentivized to mine. Yeah, maybe nation states or other big institutions will just keep just mining at a loss, maybe, just to keep the network secure and decentralized. But the incentives aren't quite there, especially once there's another competitor like Caspa that's in the space saying, oh, why would I do this when I could just move my resource to this other network where I actually get paid and it's a better technology? And I could see game theory working out. Again, it's not an issue now because there's still block rewards for Bitcoin. But then after the next halving 2028 and the one in 2032, at that point is when I've heard the security budget is going to be an issue. So we still have another, 7-8 years until it becomes an issue. But I think the issue is still going to be there.
So The thing that blockchain's going to solve is the blockchain trilemma.
Yeah.
Do you think Kaspa has solved that?
I've heard it solves it, and I can make a pretty, and I understand why people say it, and I believe it too, but I want people to tell me where I'm wrong because I haven't heard any good arguments against it. They're like, no, no one can solve it. That's the point. It's a trilemma. And I'm like, well, Casa solves it, but then Bitcoiners say so many other coins have claimed to solve it in the past, but they haven't. And so it's almost like I don't know whether Bitcoiners aren't looking into Caspa or whether they actually looked into it and then they realized it didn't solve it, but I believe it has solved it. So I mean, Caspa's, let's talk about the trilemma, right? Decentralized, scalable, and secure. So decentralized. Because Caspa is a smaller network, you don't necessarily need to join a pool to mine Caspa. You could run a home miner, and just because of how fast the blocks are, you can actually likely find a few blocks a day, which is nearly impossible, or I'll say pretty much impossible for Bitcoiners because there's only a block every 10 minutes compared to Caspa. There's 10 blocks every second. So solo miners you can basically get paid without joining a mining pool. That alone creates decentralization. The security of it is, let's say, I'm not even sure how to, I mean, same thing with miners, right? It's just like there's not concentrated, so decentralized and security kind of go hand in hand. And the scalable aspect is because so many blocks get produced a second on base layer. Okay, so yeah, because so many blocks get produced on the base layer, you're able to scale on base without going to layer 2, without going to layer 3. And this creates a completely, I don't know, like literally creates perfect money. Like if Bitcoin and Caspa were created at the same time in 2009, hands down, Caspa would have won. Is this that Bitcoin needed to come, Ethereum needed to come, all these other failed layer ones needed to come. I'm not saying they're failed, by the way. I'm just saying other failed layer ones needed to come in. So then a technology like Caspa could emerge to see, hey, what worked, what didn't work? How can we fix this issue to make the perfect base layer money? And again, we're comparing, I mean, just the fact that we're having this conversation, right? A $2 trillion asset versus a $2 billion asset. I think that carries a lot of weight. I mean, most people are not comparing the two. I mean, it's 1,000x magnitude difference, but the fact that Cas was even getting any spotlight shows like, this may be a technology to not necessarily dismiss, especially when Bitcoiners are starting to talk about it.
So you try to encourage Bitcoin maxis to study Caspa without viewing it as a threat. So what specifically would you want them to focus on when, trying to take that rose-colored lens glasses off and try not to be biased? If they actually sat down in front of a computer or listened to, a YouTube video, maybe this right here, what specifically do you want them to know about Caspa?
I would say not necessarily know about Caspa, but understand the vulnerabilities of Bitcoin. I think that's a thing that I personally did not do. It's because we're literally just trained. It's like Bitcoin is perfect, right? Or like, don't question it. Everything else is shitcoin. It literally feels like a religion. Like I wouldn't say cult, but it's saying, hey, focus on this, ignore everything else, and everything else is shitcoin by default. And like, I don't know if you see my comments. I'm just like, someone's like, oh, it's a shitcoin. And I ask literally, what makes you think it's a shitcoin? No response. Or the response I get is, it's not Bitcoin. And I think that's what gets me even more bullish on Caspa, because I'm like, there's literally some of the smartest people on the planet who understood the problem with the fiat system, who got Bitcoin. Now they're laser focused on that because the industry is filled with so many scams. So I get it because I was there. But then the fact that they're saying something's a shitcoin by definition only because it's not Bitcoin, that's where I'm like, okay, maybe I should zoom out and start looking at this a little bit more objectively. And so I wouldn't necessarily say study Caspa. I'd say understand the issues with Bitcoin, but I think studying Caspa will help you understand the issues with Bitcoin, because you're not going to go on, I don't know, maybe the algorithm works that way, but it's very difficult to find issues of Bitcoin from a former Bitcoin Maxi's perspective, because the only people you see with issues with Bitcoin are people who don't have any Bitcoin allocation at all. They don't even understand Bitcoin. So they're talking about the issues with it. They're like, oh, it doesn't produce cash flow. So many layers of understanding that need to come into this to understand the issues with Bitcoin, but also understand Caspa. But also, I was talking with one of my friends. He doesn't have any Bitcoin exposure, but I was telling him about Caspa. I told him to get the Caspa wallet. I sent him a few Cas, and he was insanely mind blown. Like, he understood Bitcoin, but he didn't have any exposure because he's like, oh, it's just like, I don't really get it. But then the fact he got the Caspa that quickly, he was able to get green pilled a lot faster than Bitcoin, even though he's never heard of Caspa before that meeting. Again, it was to Caspa, but then he told me, it's like, hey, I bought some more. And so I see this, it's actually easier just through a demonstration. Because if I were to send Bitcoin through base layer, it's like, okay, now just wait 10 minutes, let's go get a coffee. And then maybe the transaction's confirmed, maybe not, right? Yeah, so literally instantaneous. I'm like, this is the future of money. And then they're like, wow, okay, decentralized, it's yours. No one else has it.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize, Kaspa, I believe, is faster than Solana, and Solana has all these issues with their network where they go down or there's security issues. And as a proof of work, I think some people find that more enticing over some proof of stake project when it comes to security. But I did learn via Kaspa Silver.
Yeah.
He has a great YouTube channel. He's a great social media personality. But he said that Kaspa in Aramaic means silver, and I
Yeah.
know that's kind of the positioning with Kaspa is it's you know, filling out that vision that Satoshi had, which is using it as a peer-to-peer cash system. Bitcoin obviously pretty much became more of a store of value. So can you talk about how Caspas tries to fill that role as a digital money system?
Yeah, so this is where I'm still in the learning process. I'm trying to understand this because I was, again, studying Gresham's law. Bad money drives out the good. So something needs to become a store of value first before it can be accepted as payment. And I don't know if that's just a narrative that Bitcoin maxis have been saying, just so it's like, hey, don't spend your Bitcoin, just hold it. You're gonna, I mean, it's gonna gain value as fiat gets debased. I agree with that part. Is this who secures the network while everyone's holding, or while everyone's transacting on layer two? I think this is the biggest disconnect that I'm personally having, and I'm still searching for the answer, and that's why I'm not. That's why I'm allocating away from Bitcoin. Like I stopped buying Bitcoin. I was so aggressive into buying Bitcoin, literally converted everything I own into Bitcoin. But then for some reason, I never asked that question. It's like, hey, if you just hold a Bitcoin and you don't transact, or if you do transact only on layer two, who secures the network? And I think at that point, after I understood Castle a little bit more, when you're talking about with the medium exchange, because it has a faster emission schedule, there is a real threat to Caspa if it's not getting utilized as a medium exchange, or it's not utilized and the miners are not getting paid, because after the block reward's gone, miners are not going to get paid. Someone needs to secure the network. And so there's a shorter timeline. And I think that's the biggest risk of Caspa when it comes to adoption. And if there's not enough adoption, miners don't get compensated, and the network, I won't say necessarily goes down, but becomes more vulnerable to attacks. And so when it comes to medium of exchange, I would love, I don't know what it is, but I keep having this vision of, so I live kind of in downtown in Seattle. I keep having this vision of going to this coffee shop or one of these restaurants, and they give me a bill. They always give a QR code. I think it's like Toast or something. I just scan it on my phone and, pay with Apple Pay. I'm just like, why can't they just give a Caspa QR code? It's their money, instantaneous. And yeah, of course, there's price volatility, there's risk there. But in the next, today's August 23rd, in the next week or so, smart contracts are getting launched. I don't, again, the technical background I don't quite have, but I've heard and understood a bit that they could convert to USDC or some sort of stablecoin. So what I'm anticipating is to reduce the price volatility, I could pay with Caspa. It gets immediately converted to a stablecoin. So the merchant doesn't have any price volatility. And then if the merchant wants to convert it to just fiat to USD if they wanted to. But that way it secures the network. I can personally live on a Caspa standard because I know that with a fixed supply, it's also it's prone to monetary, or it's prone to fight against monetary debasement because there's a fixed supply, money's going to get debased. As long as adoption comes in, people are using it as medium exchange, secures the network. I can make a strong case that Caspa can directly compete with Bitcoin as long as more adoption happens. And I think more adoption can happen because it's so much more user friendly to use Caspa than setting up Lightning wallets or Lightning nodes, sovereign Lightning nodes, managing liquidity, all of that. It just seems a lot more burdensome for the everyday person. So I do see that happening, and I can really make a strong case for it to be a medium exchange. And then eventually people are going to think, why would I not just put all my money in Caspa? Because there's enough adoption. It's getting utilized. I can just live off the standard anytime I need to buy something. It's great. I can convert to USDT or USDC, use it, secure the network, and just live off the standard. So I can see that happening. Since right now it's a $2 billion network. I think it needs to get to at least a 200 billion before that happens. Bitcoin's at 2 trillion. And now I see people living on the Bitcoin standard, but still volatile. But now there's institutional interest keeping a, I guess, price floor. And so until that point, it's going to be difficult. But just how do we survive between the 2 billion to 200 billion? I think once CAS was at the 200 billion mark, at that point, I'd feel very comfortable going 100%. And I just think right now it's too early for my personal risk tolerance.
And I don't know if this is something you can comment on as far as technical goes, but just curious. Obviously, Bitcoin has a 4-year mining schedule. Caspa is a little different. So I was curious if you knew anything about, do you think that's a better setup, a better cycle? Obviously, we've seen forks of Bitcoin in the past. People thought a different emission schedule would be better. Caspa does it a little bit different. So if you could dive into how Caspa is different and if that's a better setup than Bitcoin's 4-year halvings.
Yeah, great question. So I know about like 92, 93% of Kaspa blocks have already been mined. And launched 2021. So it's pretty quick. It's gonna, by 2030, all the Kaspa is gonna be, or close to that time, all the Kaspa is gonna be mined. So the only way the network is secured is through uh, basic transaction fees. And so it's a lot shorter timeline. But I can make the case that when Bitcoin launched 2009, no one heard of, crypto literally, that entire industry did not exist. No one knew it other than a group of people who are part of Satoshi's network or, through the email list or some forums online. So very few people understood it. And then it didn't gain adoption. And then until recently, as more and more, as the crypto industry is growing, now people are starting to understand it more. So with Caspa launching in 2021, I think the faster mission schedule makes sense because people understand crypto. It's been around for over at least 10 years at that point, cryptocurrencies. And so people are looking out for the next big thing. So it wasn't something that just came out of nowhere. As for Bitcoin, literally came out of nowhere, right? There was a problem with fiat, so there was a solution. But with Caspa, because everyone's looking, I think it's a fair emission schedule because the whole point is, hey, let's get everything mined before ASICs come into place. So that way it can be more decentralized. Let's mine with GPUs, with CPUs, GPUs, and then now with ASICs. If it was a longer emission schedule, it'd be pretty concentrated with mining rigs and all of that. So, I think the goal is just like, hey, let's get as much out there. And then I think it's fair just because of where we are in the crypto cycle. Right? It's 2021 when it launched versus 2009. So I personally think it's fair.
Gotcha.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's tough. You have to really understand it because I know some people don't really understand the technical side of things and how the emission schedule works. So, I'm trying to learn it too. So, I'm asking you these questions out of general curiosity just to kind of hear.
I'll just full disclaimer in case the audience doesn't know this. My background is not the technical side. It's more on the economics, monetary policy, usability, the user interface. I'm just seeing which technology would likely have better mass adoption and which one would fulfill Satoshi's vision better of peer-to-peer electronic cash. And I just genuinely did not believe Bitcoin does that on layer 1 anymore. Layer 2 is no longer peer-to-peer, right? So that's where I think my biggest hang-up is with the original mission. And people are like, oh, it's a store of value. It has to go through these phases. And I'm like, yeah, it does. But it also needs to be utilized. And it needs to be utilized on base layer, not layer 2.
Yeah. And I appreciate you for raising these questions. You're honestly doing something brave. It's like a politician saying something that goes against their party's beliefs. People are encouraged not to speak up. You've gotten a lot of backlash from the Bitcoin community. So maybe let's
funny.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I have a handful of friends in real life too. In the Bitcoin community. I remember I was texting one of my friends in North Carolina. I'm like, bro, you got looking at Caspa. The text he sent me was, are you hacked? Because he knows the biggest Bitcoin maxi. And I've been telling him like, dude, you got to allocate Bitcoin, get more Bitcoin. And then when I told him that, I'm like, no, it's actually really a phenomenal technology. He literally asked, are you hacked? So I sent him a few resources and he ended up allocating a little bit to Caspa. But I have some in-person friends and, they're great people. I enjoy hanging out with them, got beers with them a few times and good time, part of a group chat, but they're very hardcore Bitcoin maxis. And I could feel like I'm no longer part of that community, even though I'm still in the group chat. Like I'm just like not really in it because they follow me on X. They see, my posts. I see a handful of them unfollow me, which is fine. Like I don't actually care that much just because I've only met them a few times. Again, great people, just don't necessarily believe the same things. It really does feel like a religion, which again, it's fine. Some people follow it. I do feel a spiritual connection with the sound money community. Is this when it comes to I'm right, you're wrong without any explanation? I think that's where my issue is. Like I'm completely okay getting told that I'm wrong. In fact, that's what happened. The Caspa community literally told me I was wrong and I dismissed it. But then enough of them kept telling me, and I'm like, okay, fine, let me look into this. I'm like, oh crap, you're right. And so it's like, yeah, I wouldn't say maybe I burned some bridges, but I think I'd opened up so many more opportunities. I had like 1,600 followers in the Bitcoin community. When I started getting to Caspa, I tripled my followers. So it's like, yeah, and that's the net follower growth. So I lost hundreds of followers. I was looking at it and I'm like, wow, all these people unfollowed me. So many people muted me, blocked me, and but still a positive net benefit of 3x that. And I'm still waiting for Maxis to tell me where I'm wrong. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm okay to get told I'm wrong. So if someone's watching this, just tell me I'm wrong, where I am, so I could study it, because I'm always learning, right? It's I want people to tell me where the vulnerabilities are.
Yeah, I actually discovered you like during that time period when you made that transition from Bitcoin to Caspa. I believe I actually reached out to you a couple months ago, and you wanted to wait a little bit just to learn a little bit more about Caspa.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you did, but I appreciate the discussion we're having now. But just sticking on the fact, you mentioned a couple times right now, Caspa's only at a $2 billion market cap, basically. Bitcoin's 2 trillion plus. How do we get there? Just maybe in the top 10. Caspa's already top 30, top 25 by market cap, I
Top
believe
50
already.
right now, I think. So
Oh,
I
it's
mean, a lot
50.
of volatility in the last few days. I mean, it was like top 40, but
Okay.
I mean, Ethereum's like shooting, like everything's rising, and Casa's kind of staying steady right now. But of course, short-term market
Yeah.
trends literally mean nothing. But yeah, your question
But
is
it
how do we
also
get to?
had, I believe in 2023, Caspa basically had a run of its own while most of the other coins were basically doing nothing. I don't know if that's indicative of, Caspa is a fair launch project. I don't know if that's maybe one of the things that's drawn you to it as well. For me, it was. I like to see charts that look natural and healthy to me that don't have manipulation. And I believe it's small enough with not enough attention yet, where enough capital that needed to see it, price go up for any reason that's going to dictate the price or the market. So to me, it just looks normal, looks healthy. It doesn't have that big interest yet. So my question would be, how is it going to get that interest and that adoption? Is it going to ride Bitcoin's curtails, or is it going to be positioned as completely something better and something separate?
So I think my baseline scenario is it's a direct competitor against Ethereum. Again, I'm not super technical on Ethereum, but Ethereum, a lot of smart contracts are on there, but it's fairly centralized, uses proof of stake. The thing is there's no other proof of work coins in the top 5 other than Bitcoin. And Bitcoin literally is just known as perfect money, pristine collateral. That really doesn't do anything other than the fact people believe it does something, but that's how the entire financial markets works, right? So it's like, that's not an argument against it. It's just how finance works. So I get it. But Ethereum, because it has smart contracts, and again, in a week, smart contracts are launching on Caspa. I'm really curious to see how the adoption grows there and whether this proof of work coin can have the potential to displace it. It's faster than Solana. It's cheaper than Ethereum. It's better money than Bitcoin. And Caspa is literally a combination of all three, literally creating, in my opinion, the perfect cryptocurrency. Money, smart contracts, and speed. It's absolutely fascinating. So that's where my base case is. I see a top 5 potential. And then once it's there, I think more people are going to, especially Wall Street or more Bitcoin maxis, are going to look into it. It's like, okay, what is this thing? Why is it rising so fast? But I'm going to ignore it because it's not Bitcoin, it's a shitcoin. And I think it's going to continue until it's in second place. And then as Maxi start looking for reasons to discredit it, at that point, they're going to say, wow, okay, I can't believe I missed this. This actually is a direct competition to Bitcoin. It overtook the other cryptocurrencies. But of course, I don't know how far away we are from that. Maybe a few years. Maybe it never happens. I'm trying to be realistic. I mean, it is super early. It's again 2 billion versus 300 billion for Ethereum. I don't even know what Ethereum's market cap is. I know it hit all-time highs. And so I see that as the baseline. So I see at least 100x potential in the next, I don't know how many years, but that is, I think, my baseline, because I do think it's better than all other cryptocurrencies. From a technical perspective, it just needs more adoption. So speaking of adoption, how do I think of it as successful is if I can go to a store or restaurant in a city, and if they accept it and create a circular economy. Like, I know people are creating like circular economies with Bitcoin Lightning, which is cool. Is this not supporting the miners? It's creating Bitcoin awareness, but it's creating layer 2 awareness, not actual Bitcoin. And that's my biggest problem. If everything was happening on the base layer, it's awesome. It's like, hey, supporting the network, everyone, it actually gets decentralized. It's actually stronger. But when everything gets transacted on layer 2, it actually becomes extremely centralized, because most people are not going to run their own Lightning wallets or their Lightning nodes. So it means you have to use a custodial, like third-party node or wallet. And at that point, a bunch of people are going to be using it. I mean, it becomes extremely centralized, can be censorship prone, as in it's like, hey, for whatever reason, I don't agree with your political affiliation or whatever, religious affiliation, or you're trying to leave the country for war, I can shut off your access because it's centralized, right? You basically are using a custodial wallet that goes literally against Bitcoin. And the people who are fleeing that, they don't have enough money to do transactions on the base layer. Like maybe right now it's not a problem, but in the next 20 years, that's absolutely going to be a problem. Most people will not be able to afford the base layer transactions. And so at that point, it literally defeats the purpose of Bitcoin when the whole point is to be permissionless money, because most people will be forced to use layer 2s and 3s. So I think at that point, when it comes to adoption, is there's a natural pain point. We haven't felt it yet. We're not going to feel it for another, again, 8 to 10 years. But when you start feeling it, people are going to look for a better alternative. And at that point, I believe Kaspa is going to be making up the ranks. It's going to be a top 5. It's going to be more visible. In my opinion, again, not a prediction, but that's what I believe. At that point, people are going to look for an alternative. And that's where I think there's a possibility for Kaspa to overtake Bitcoin in the long run. I think it's way too high of a target right now. It needs to make it through the first initial stages, get to the top 5, and then we could see what happens there.
So if Michael Saylor sat down with you at a restaurant, what would be the first thing you would say to him about Kaspa? If the most important thing that you think he would consider if he were going to consider anything outside of Bitcoin, let's say it's 5 or 8 years from now, and those concerns actually start to show their head, and Michael Saylor says, okay, well, maybe it's time to look at another solution. What would you tell him about Kaspa?
It's a great question. First of all, I thank him for introducing me to Bitcoin to the degree he did. I mean, he orange pilled so many people in the world, and I think that's phenomenal. But then I'd ask him, like, hey, what was that tweet you did in 2012, 2013 dismissing Bitcoin? And then 7 years later, you came back and you got into Bitcoin. What happened there? It's like, is it possible you didn't look into Kaspa? I mean, don't make the same mistake. Like, you've done phenomenal. I want Bitcoin to succeed. I truly do. But I see these flaws. What do you think of it? I wouldn't necessarily, it's like, there's this quote. It's like, don't tell people what to think, but tell them what to think about and let them come to their own conclusions. Like for me, all I'm doing is just pointing out some flaws in Bitcoin because, again, I'm heavily exposed to it. It's in my best interest to get, solutions to these flaws. But the best solution is 1/1000th the size. And I think that's also a risk on its own. So I'm right in this in-between part. I'm starting to see Bitcoin was, in my opinion, perfect. And I'm like, oh crap, there's flaws here. And then here's the solution, but it's too small for me to allocate too heavily into for my risk tolerance. And so I'm in that in-between spot, but by the time in 8 to 10 years, if I'm having that conversation with Saylor, that'd be pretty cool. I'd ask him like, hey, what do you think about this issue with Bitcoin? Everyone's using layer 2s. Yeah, you're talking about it being a pristine collateral. It is, but who secures the network if everyone's using layer 2 for transactions? And you're saying, yo, institutions are doing it. It's like, okay, so Bitcoin's no longer the permissionless money that Satoshi envisioned, right? The everyday person is getting screwed because now we're just right back to the fiat system almost, right? And it's getting that way because the more it gets centralized, more people using layer 2s, it's possible, again, maybe the technical side may or not be, but paper Bitcoin on layer 2s can exist. I mean, I know that to open up a Lightning wallet, you need to put up Bitcoin as collateral, open up channels, but that's for sovereign Lightning channels. Most people are not going to be doing that. They're going to be using a custodial wallet. And at that point, there's no guarantee that they don't necessarily issue out more claims to the same Bitcoin. Maybe regulations stop it, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. And regulations change, right? So I'm thinking about literally hundreds of years in the future. There's a possibility that we go right back to the current fiat system because people are like, oh, not everyone withdraws or not everyone uses their Lightning channels at the same time. So let me just lend out more than I have to earn some more, right? So that's my biggest issue. If people are not self-custodying it, it's I think we're just repeating history over and over again. Maybe it happens because humans are really good at that. So yeah, I guess to answer your question really quick is I'd ask him questions about what he thinks and then see if he can reach a similar conclusion as I do. Or maybe he tells me, he's like, no, Vijay, you're wrong because you haven't considered this. And I want him to do that too. I want everyone to do that. And that's why I'm having these discussions. And I'm trying to keep it as open-minded as possible because, again, I'm trying to learn and I ask a lot of these questions. And when I just don't get the answers that, like a good answer, it's just like, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe the Kaspa community is onto something. And that's why I'm having these conversations with you too.
Yep. And you mentioned, having your background in TradFi, you mentioned one of the things that first brought you over to Bitcoin was understanding and realizing that it was pristine capital. So what made your realization or shift happen from Bitcoin into Kaspa? What was that thing that initially just sparked your curiosity and said, okay, maybe this is, better pristine capital or whatever it was?
I wouldn't say Caspa's better Pristine Capital at this moment, but I see that as a potential. And so again, I'm still mostly in Bitcoin for a reason, because it's just maybe a safer bet. I don't know if that's the correct word. And so if enough people believe it's Pristine Capital, it's going to continue doing better. There's ETFs, Wall Street supports it. Enough of them believe it. So I'm going to hold on to Bitcoin. And that's the whole thing. I mean, just again, given my investing background, this is just how I think. It's not about what I think. It's about what I think other people think. So I believe Bitcoin maxis are so attached and glued to Bitcoin. They're going to continue buying regardless of the price, including myself. I literally thought that way. Like when the market's hitting all-time highs, I remember me and AA Stacks were like, hey, let's smash buy whatever it is literally at all-time highs. It's just a fun little tradition. It's like, doesn't matter, all-time highs, let's buy some more. And I see that in the community. And I think that's almost beautiful in a way, right? It's like something that we're also passionate about. We want sound money to win. We want to escape the fiat system. But when we're in that, we start ignoring some of the issues with Bitcoin. And so it is pristine collateral right now because the issues have not arrived. But again, in 10 years, issues may start arriving. And at that point, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be pristine collateral if the base layer is not as secured as it is now. Maybe it will be. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. Maybe enough institutions use the base layer to keep it secured. Maybe they're okay paying the crazy high end fees. Maybe the everyday person's like, okay, yeah, let me just use layer twos because I don't need to hold my own Bitcoin. It's like, I don't. So I have no idea how the landscape's going to evolve. And that's why I still hold Bitcoin. I don't plan to sell any Bitcoin right now until I see a massive change in the landscape for whatever reason. Kaspa, I don't think is pristine collateral right now because it's so small, but it absolutely has the potential to be. And so as adoption grows, as more people get it, as more people are holding it, I do believe it's going to be that new pristine collateral. Again, fixed supply, proof of work, no ICO, not VC backed. It's pretty decentralized. I mean, most people in the Kaspa community are former Bitcoin maxis. They understand Bitcoin. They understand the problems. They're actual. I mean, they care a lot, and most of them are not selling their Kaspa, and that's why it's holding pretty well. I mean, if you think about it, yeah, it has drops, but in the early days of Bitcoin, it dropped, what, 80, 95% or so? Kaspa has only dropped, I mean, only, right, from TradFi perspective, they're like, bro, you're crazy, but it's only dropped like 70%, which is comparatively to Bitcoin in its early days is pretty good, as in a lot more people are holding it. And as time goes on, I think, like, I'm holding it. I'm buying literally every single day. And I see more people like me. It's like, I truly believe in it. So I'm buying every day and people are selling it to me, which I'm happy with. Eventually, I do believe it's going to be the best pristine collateral we have. But right now, it's too early to make that statement.
So right now, the most profitable mineable cryptocurrency is still Bitcoin with the SHA-256 algorithm. And then second would be Dogecoin. And you mentioned outside of Bitcoin, there's no other proof of work in the top 5. Well, in the top 10 would be Dogecoin, which is funny because it's a meme coin.
Yeah.
And, it's a fork of Bitcoin. I don't think anybody really takes it seriously outside of maybe Elon Musk.
Even then, he just makes fun of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the one criticism is that right there. Bitcoin still is the most profitable. So in regards to people setting up, mining companies, or maybe just setting up a home mining, rig or something like that. Do you think the fact that Kaspa's faster emission schedule, which basically makes the mining profitability just lower much more rapidly than it does for Bitcoin, do you think that's going to be an issue down the line?
It could be. I mean, I'm not saying there's not an issue there. First of all, I mean, with Dogecoin being the top 10, that is pretty funny. And again, these are the technologies and networks that are ahead of Kaspa, which make me bullish on Kaspa. It's okay. So it's like, imagine working so hard for something and someone who doesn't deserve it is doing better than you. It's just a matter of time before you're able to catch up and expose the fraud, right? That's how I view it. Again, super early. So I mean, when you're talking about mining, sorry, I missed that question. Say that one more time.
Just the fact that the faster emission schedule, which decreases the profitability of mining over time. Like last year, a year and a half ago at this time, Kaspa was very profitable to mine.
Yeah,
now, just in a short amount of time, it's not anymore.
Right. This is an argument that Bitcoin maxis make. They're saying that governments and institutions will mine Bitcoin, even if it's at a loss, to secure the network because it's important for society. It's a possibility, again, if Kaspa can make it through this early stage, that even if it becomes unprofitable, I think there will be people, maybe even, again, throwing this out there, I haven't thought this through, so tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe nonprofits, maybe other people deep pockets that will continue mining to secure the network, even if it's unprofitable. Right now with the low price, yeah, hash rate's down. It's a real threat. If the price stays lower sustainably for long term, it's going to impact the network, as in not enough miners are going to be incentivized to mine, again, because it's so small. But as Kaspa continues growing, as more adoption takes place, I think of that to be less and less of a threat. And that's why Bitcoiners are saying, hey, if something happens with the network, I think big players are going to step in to make it sure it's secured. And it could happen. Like, I mean, everyone has a vested interest in Bitcoin succeeding. Is this the incentives aren't quite aligned long term, especially when there's a competitor that does everything better, again, in the long term. Right? It's like there's a reason why we're switching from gold to Bitcoin, and there's this huge like clash between them. It's like, oh, you guys are antiquated, Bitcoin's the future. And people assume that innovation stops at Bitcoin. And I assume that too. But then you realize, there's something better. But then Bitcoin Maxi are like, no, innovation stopped with us. It's like, okay, you're making the same argument against gold. Innovation will continue. The market will naturally go to whatever's cheaper and more user-friendly, and it just makes life easier. So I think Kaspa is that. And I see more and more Bitcoiners allocating to Kaspa. Like I get a handful of DMs every week saying, Vijay, I bought my first amount of Kaspa from Bitcoin Maxis. And yeah, sorry, did not answer your question, but
no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, well, I mean, you make a great point. And Google was the 14th search engine. And sometimes it takes 5, 10, 15 years plus for, these healthy competition to take place and for a clear winner to be exposed. So you never know.
And
10
even
years from
then,
now,
Google
Casper could be a lot bigger.
Yeah, like Google hasn't won. I mean, we're playing the infinite game, right? ChatGPT is in the space, DeepSeek's in the space. A lot more AI companies. Like I haven't actually Googled something. I've noticed it. I go straight to DeepSeek or straight to ChatGPT. That's my Google now.
Same.
And so, yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? It's happening. And I remember going to, I went to a museum and I just saw a bunch of kids like on their phones, and I just glanced over. They're on ChatGPT. They're literally asking questions about a particular piece of art on ChatGPT versus going on Google. And this is how it's going, right? Like you said, Google was a 14th attempt, and Google was winning. Doesn't mean it has won. And so when people say Bitcoin has won, I don't know if that's just ignorance or maybe I don't know what the reason is, but I can say confidently Bitcoin is winning, but there is no I have won, because it's an infinite game. Things will always continue changing. And if you say, hey, I've won, you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Right. And
so
it's an opt-in, it's an opt-in network too, as in you choose, you're saying that if people find a better alternative and they're critically thinking about it, they will switch. And so you don't want to be the last one holding the bag. I'm not saying Bitcoin's going away. I don't think it will. It's just like how Yahoo hasn't gone away, right? But I haven't searched anything on Yahoo for a while, but it's adapted to something else. Yahoo Finance is still pretty used. For some reason, I still have a Yahoo email and I use it pretty well. So, I mean, I still use Yahoo. It hasn't gone away, but Google took market share. That's what I think is going to happen with Kaspa and Bitcoin. They're both going to exist. And at least during our lifetimes, they will both exist. But as time goes on, market share will rotate from one to another.
So let's talk about the ecosystem potentially that is going to be being built on top of Kaspa. We have smart contracts coming, as you had mentioned. Now, if you think it's a rival with Ethereum, I would argue that it's going to have to build out a pretty big, healthy ecosystem with tons of opportunities like possibly yield or lending and borrowing. There's already meme coins on Kaspa, but all of these different, sectors and narratives within the space, as, a blockchain like Ethereum, that's the appeal there. That's why institutions want to earn yield on it. That's why retail likes to earn yield on it. But what do you think is going to take for a Kaspa ecosystem to help push that marketing home, to help bring recognition to Kaspa as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll be honest, smart contracts are not my forte. I just heard that it's something that can happen on Kaspa. It's something that's utilized on Ethereum. I just personally I'm not involved in that community at all. I'm more in the money aspect of Kaspa. And so for me, my entire thing is how can we use smart contracts to enable payments to encourage people to use it? And so I'm in the smart contract camp of switching to stable coins. That's the only thing that I've even kind of remotely looked at. Even then, I'm not anywhere close to an expert at all. I'm thinking, okay, these mom and pop shops, they say, hey, $10 minimum to accept credit card, or else, you got to pay in cash. Why do they do that? Because the fees are so high. Now, if I tell them like, hey, you can accept Caspa instead and immediately converts to USDT or USDC, they might be more interested. And saying, hey, it's like cash, but it's yours. You don't have any volatility risk, and you save 3% in credit card fees. I see more adoption like that. And I see more use cases for smart contracts, or that's the only use cases that I've looked into, at least a small amount for smart contracts. I'm sure, I know there's memes and all that. We just launched Slow, Jonathan's turtle. I don't know if you saw that he was on a podcast, but
yeah, I did. Yeah.
yeah, he named his turtle Bitcoin. And so someone launched a meme coin called Slow, and it has like 2,000 holders in like 24 hours or something like that. So it's just, part of history, and people, it's a small community, so people can have fun and, do these fun creative projects. But, utility or not, it's just a fun way to connect the community. So I really don't understand the smart contract space or where the utility is going to be right now, especially even with Ethereum. Like, I know people are saying, oh, you could do a handful of things. I just have not personally studied it. So I'm curious to see what Caspa does that makes it better than Ethereum. But I've heard that it can be a direct competitor. Again, smart contracts aren't even live for another week. So this is, putting myself way out there, like too many steps out there. So yeah, we'll see how it evolves.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess another question, playing devil's advocate, what are some things about Caspa so far, just in you learning about it and studying it, that maybe you didn't really like too much, that maybe make you a little bearish on it?
I don't really like about it. It's like all the FUD that I've heard, I looked into, it's gotten debunked. So the first major FUD was about the pruning nodes and versus archival nodes. People are saying that Bitcoiners are like, how can you make this money if not every single transaction is verified? And then it's like, okay, that's an interesting point. Again, I'm open to listening to real criticisms because I want to learn. And Caspians are saying that pruning nodes are all you need. And so I started looking into this, and I thought, okay, there's, I don't know, like 900,000 Bitcoin blocks. How many times have I personally gone through the history of blockchains to verify transactions that are not my own? Like, do I truly care? No. Does it work? Are my UTXOs in place? Does my Bitcoin balance say that my Bitcoin balance, or is my amount of Bitcoin I have accurate? That's all I care about. It's like, if something happened, I don't need to see the archival node, but what's important to me is every UTXO set verifiable? As in, is it cryptographically verifiable that hasn't been tampered with, and it is it's accurate? And the fact that it can be, and pruning nodes enable that, I don't personally see a problem with that. Some people might. They're like, oh, I need to see every single thing. I'm like, does it really matter if it works? Like, I honestly don't know how the engine of a car works, but it works, right? I don't need to know how the interface or the back end of Google or ChatGPT works. I really don't understand machine learning or AI, the back end of it, but it works, right? As a user, I'm just like, cool, it works. I got my answer, I got my solution. Cool. Do you see the game last night? I mean, right? So that's exactly it. Right now, we're so early that everyone cares about the technicals because you want to make sure the technology works. And I think it's extremely important. But I'm putting myself in the, let's say 2 billion people adopt either Bitcoin or Caspa. Do they truly care as long as they're first not getting debased, their payments go through, their money stays safe? Like, outside of that, are they truly going to care? Maybe some hardcore people do, but for the mass majority of people, I don't know if they will. They'll just go to whichever is cheaper, which one's user friendly, which one keeps them debased, which one's safer, right? It's just, they're going to a better technology. And we're so early, and it's just like, it just really frustrates me when people say Bitcoin is won. Again, going back to, it's like, dude, 97% of the world does not have Bitcoin. It has not won. It is winning. One is there's mass adoption. The entire world's on a Bitcoin standard. Even then, it is winning. There could be something else that disrupts it, right? Like, the fiat standard is literally winning, but it's a terrible standard. And Bitcoin is in the process of disrupting it. But for whatever reason, Bitcoiners, again, including myself, don't believe it's possible for Bitcoin to get disrupted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you think in the next 5 years or so, there would be a technology that would gain the masses' attention outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum, do you see any other cryptocurrency rivaling, Caspa, or do you think, or has any of these other cryptocurrencies, you know, taken your attention as much as Caspa has? Has there been anything else that's been this compelling to you?
No, but also I haven't been in a community outside of Bitcoin and Kaspa. So, I thought Ethereum was interesting at a very small amount, like nothing material. But I converted all to Bitcoin because once I started listening to more Maxis, they're like, hey, everything trends to zero against Bitcoin. And I believed it. And I saw evidence of it. Yeah, groceries are getting more expensive in fiat, but everything's getting cheaper on the Bitcoin standard. Real estate's getting more expensive in fiat, but cheaper on the Bitcoin standard. Ethereum, I don't know if you saw that chart of Bitcoin versus Ethereum. Ethereum's literally in a downtrend against Bitcoin. Maybe not recently, but this is how it was a few months back. And so I ignored that. XRP, obviously, I mean, I've seen it as a scam. I mean, it's literally pre-mined 100 billion coins. It looks like management's just dumping it on retail. They're making these promises. The next one is a stable coin. And then I don't even know what number 5 is, but it's in the top 5 is this Bitcoin was the only thing that made sense. And in the sea of millions of crypto coins or cryptocurrencies, it made sense to ignore every single one of them. The only reason I looked into Kaspa is because I had enough compelling bots, quote unquote. It's a joke in the community because apparently we just swarm every Bitcoin post or whatnot that mentions Casper or altcoins, and people generally think that we're bots. But enough of them made compelling arguments to look into it. Some of them insulted my intellectual curiosity, which is, I guess, smart because it got me to start looking. It's like, okay, all right, I don't want to be as ignorant as a no coiner when it comes to Bitcoin. So let me look into it. It's because I was open minded. I even got into Bitcoin. Because again, Bitcoin has not won. So many people don't understand it. In fact, most of TradFi tells you to avoid it. And so because of my open mindedness, I've looked into Bitcoin and I don't think it should just stop there. So then I started looking at Kaspa, and that makes the most sense. So if someone comes to me and they say, hey, you should look into this coin, I've had 17, I'm making this number, but I had so many people DMing me, asking me about another coin. And I said, I'm like, tell me why. They give me a blurb and I'm like, okay, I just don't care personally. If like for me, my entire thing is sound money. If there's other utility, sure, that's a bonus, but that's not my main reason I'm even looking into it. So someone says, oh, but this is the Bitcoin of XYZ. I'm like, dude, I don't care. Does this help with debasement of currency? No. Does this help the masses? No. So personally, I'm not interested in those projects. It could have utility. It might do well on a fiat return standard, I guess, but I just don't personally have interest in those. Not saying that they don't exist. If something comes out better than Kaspa, doesn't mean I'll switch. Is there a strong enough pain point for Kaspa to consider switching? And that's the thing. It's not about a better technology. It's just that there is a pain point for Bitcoin that Maxis are unable to see because the pain point isn't here yet. Excuse me. But when the pain point comes, they're going to look for an obvious solution. And I think Kaspa is that solution.
So you mentioned basically you just want to focus on the money aspect of things when it comes to Kaspa. For example, Cardano just kind of unlocked with Bitcoin DeFi on that platform. You can now earn yield on your Bitcoin. That's something a lot of Bitcoiners don't really care about. Maybe don't even trust the blockchain and figure they might just expose their Bitcoin to being lost or stolen somehow. But do you think if Kaspa offered some sort of yield opportunity, would you trust the network enough to offer up some of your Kaspa to potentially earn yield on it on native to Kaspa on that ecosystem?
So I'll be honest, I haven't studied Cardano at all, and I don't know anything about the risks of it. But I personally have not offered up my Bitcoin for yield. I haven't borrowed against my Bitcoin. I mean, in the Bitcoin community, we just say just buy and transfer to like cold storage and just hold. And that's all I do. And so it's just, I haven't even considered the yield part just because I didn't even know that existed. Also, I don't know if it's too early for that. I haven't heard any buzz about it in Axe at all for me to even look into it. But something gets offered in Kaspa, I don't know. I need to see enough buzz and enough compelling argument to part with the Kaspa to get yield, what the risks are. Is there a risk of losing the Kaspa and how to mitigate it? So it's kind of might be too early for my risk tolerance to do that, but might be something for me to explore out of curiosity. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, I mean, what do you think of that one?
I think it all comes down to the security of the network. And the only reason why I mentioned Cardano is because I'm a big holder of it myself.
Oh, you are? Okay.
And it is using basically very similar models, the UTXO model that Bitcoin has. In my opinion, it's a good mix of the positive and the best parts of Bitcoin and the best parts of Ethereum, just more efficient. But it offers that yielding opportunity for Bitcoiners. But if Kaspa offered that, I think it would be interesting if you were able to do that natively because it does have its own smart contracts and its own ecosystem. So like you said, it's in my opinion, also very similar to Cardano because it's also kind of the best parts of Bitcoin, even better, more efficient, but also it can be a competitor to Ethereum as well, like you said. So that to me is just super interesting. And I'm super curious to see how the ecosystem on Caspa continues to build out because
Yeah.
it could offer things, with security because that's the thing I have in the back of my mind. I wouldn't be doing some of the things I do natively in Cardano on a system like Solana, for example, because I just can't trust its security.
Yeah.
So if, Caspa's never been hacked, if Caspa starts having, native tokens on its blockchain with yield opportunities or lending, et cetera, with good APYs, it might not be more of a risk as opposed to someone putting money on Celsius or Voyager in the past where these high yielding opportunities just lend or just, ended up in people getting scammed because it was
Yeah.
still centralized. But
Right.
something like Caspa, it would still be decentralized. So there's more of that trust there. So
Got it.
yeah,
So tell me more about how that would work again. From explain like I'm 5 because I really don't understand this landscape at all. So walk me through how yielding works from this perspective and what the benefits are from all the parties involved.
yeah. So from how I understand it is there's multiple ways to earn a yield on top of your cryptocurrency. And in a space like um, a layer one blockchain like Ethereum or Cardano, for example, Ethereum, you can have it done basically, obviously via staking. You can earn an APY that way. But then if you also lend your cryptocurrency, so if you lend your ETH to a protocol to add liquidity, you can earn yield that way for adding and giving liquidity to the protocol. Now, there's different ways to do that. And on something like Cardano, in my opinion, it's the safest way to engage in DeFi that way because it's actually a secure blockchain. It's never been hacked. It's never had any downtime. And I think it's because it was based on academic research and they didn't try to move fast and break things. Like Solana, for example, who the network goes down, there's constantly hacks and funds are lost. So I can't trust engaging in DeFi in a blockchain that I can't trust its
Trust.
security.
Yeah.
But if, the mining aspect of things, if you have a successful mining protocol, then security can be top of line. So,
Hmm.
I mean, that's what Bitcoin offers because there's so many miners. It's not like there's a weakness in the mining setup that brings the security. And I think that's what a person like Michael Saylor looks at as the security.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if Kaspa is going to evolve and never be hacked and, you know, um, offer opportunities like that because I would consider trusting it.
Got it. Do you think Caspa directly competes against Cardano in the long run?
I think they all do because they're all competing for the same eyes. They're all competing for institutional interest to want to put, billions of dollars into it. And they're all competing for retail individuals, maybe like ourselves, that are just looking for a better money alternative. Some are better to park their money long term that maybe could give them a better yield than a 4% APY with their regional bank or with their Chase Bank or something like that. And I think they're all competing for the same eyes.
Got it. What about from a usability, the everyday person, not necessarily institutional interest? Let's say all institutions disappeared for the everyday mass market population.
Yeah, I think I keep saying Solana, but I think though that's a big competitor too. I think this founder of Solana is smart because he's been working on cell phones for a long time before he started Solana. That's why they have their own cell phone offering. But I think it's the easeability. How easy is it for someone to interact with whatever you're using? Most people don't even know, what crypto is.
Yeah.
But if they can interact with something easy, an app on their phone, whatever it is, I think that's what it's going to get, home to bring mass adoption to go to a specific platform. It's just focusing on the user experience.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, continue with that. I got to do some studying on Cardano and the smart contract space and the yielding and staking and all that.
Yeah, we have a video with Angry Crypto, someone that's in the big in the Cardano space. That's on our channel here, so if you want to check that out. But yeah, I mean, if I would definitely encourage you to do it. When I first got into crypto, it was around the 2021 time, and for whatever reason, that Cardano was the one that stood out to me,
Yeah.
and it's my conviction, and everything has just continued to grow stronger to this day. It's my biggest
Yeah.
holding, that and Bitcoin.
Is it?
But I've also had Caspa in the past.
Yeah.
Basically 2 years ago was when I started to look at Kaspa
Oh
shortly
wow,
after it
okay.
came out.
So what
Yeah,
made you dump it?
I still have a little bit,
Oh, you do?
but
Okay.
basically I wanted to. So do you know who? I believe it was Stanley Druckenmiller. Do you know who Stanley Druckenmiller is?
For the name, tell me about.
So he was basically like George Soros's money manager,
Got it. Got it. Yes.
I believe. Oh, sorry about that. But there's been a couple billionaire investors that have said the same thing, and this is probably a little controversial. I'm curious to see what you say as
Yeah.
a CFA too. But a lot of people talk about diversification and say it's garbage, and
Yeah.
say don't spread yourself too thin. Find maybe 2 or 3 things that you have really high conviction in, and just run with that.
Yeah.
So I decided to basically switch up my strategy a little bit and go heavier into Bitcoin and Cardano, and then utilize Cardano native tokens to basically have leverage on my Cardano.
Got it.
One of the native tokens I chose was actually the biggest in their ecosystem, which is a meme coin called SNEC,
Huh. Wait,
which
the
is very
snake
funny
one?
to
Yeah.
me. Yeah, it's funny to me because Cardano is an actual blockchain that was meant for real world usage. They're not a meme coin platform like Solana is, but that project has just been so successful. Kind of grassroots upbringing that the community is using it as this marketing tool. It has an actual product behind it. It was a fair launch, and so far it outperforms ADA. So
Huh.
whenever the market goes up and ADA runs, it'll run higher. So
Wow.
that's basically how I've positioned my holding there.
Yeah. So we have this saying in financial planning. It's concentration builds wealth, diversification preserves wealth. And so I agree with that. I mean, it really depends on where you are in your life. I mean, you need to have concentrated positions to build wealth, but just know it's high risk. So you need to be okay starting with maybe zero, but not necessarily zero. You need to be okay getting set back. And if you have enough time, I would lean towards more concentrated positions. If I was just 3 years away from retirement, I would say I should not have this much exposure into 2 assets, right? That's when you need to be diversified so you can safely withdraw or draw from your investments without risk of ruin at retirement. So it really depends where you are. I mean, you're a young guy. I'm fairly young too. It's I think concentrated is the way to go because we have time to make it up if it did not go our way. So I am completely with it. I mean, a lot of clients that I work with, they have concentrated positions in like Meta and Amazon and all these major tech companies, but that's how they built their wealth. That's why they're worth so much. But now that they're transitioning into retirement, they need to diversify. And so it's how do you exit some of that position in a tax efficient way to basically have the income that you need, like build a portfolio to create the income that you need to live a good retirement. So they
Yeah.
built that wealth again through concentration. So I think that's okay for our age.